Hello everyone, welcome to your final chapter of IDCP, which is 12 Principles of Animation. Now in this chapter we are going to look at 12 basic principles that you follow when you're creating any sort of animation. Now these principles were given to the world by famous Walt Disney. He has invented these animation principles when he designs and wrote these cartoons of the earlier stage in 1930s and 1920s, cartoons like Bambi and Snow White and other famous Disney cartoons that you know. So number one of principles of animation is a very common principle that we use. It's known as squash and stretch. Now let me demonstrate this with a GIF file. If you look at this animation right here, you can see this particular cube is jumping up and down, and rather than showing it just jumping up and down, you can see just before it jumps up, it goes down a little bit. That means gain the strength, and then jump up, it comes to a halt, and when it goes down, it again get squash and stretch. Now this is very common in most of the animation that you see or cartoons, because this gives a certain realism to the overall outlook of this particular scene. For example, you can see if this cube were to jump up and down without any side movement, without any stretching, it would be a very rigid object. But you get the feeling when you look at this particular GIF that it is a soft object which moves here and there, and it has that natural movement. So this is known as a squash and stretch. Moving into the second animation principle, it is known as the anticipation. Anticipation means preparing for an action. Before you do a certain action in a cartoon, you need to prepare for it. So let me show you a GIF again. Now look at this cube here. This cube is about to fall. It's trying to fall, but just without falling, straight away without falling, it gathers the strength by moving to the left and right, and then drops, which gives this more realistic output for the cartoon. So understand, giving anticipation is very important for a character. Now imagine if you're showing a cartoon character who is throwing a ball, let's say a cricket ball. Now before throwing a cricket ball, you need to bring your arm to the behind and little bit go down from the knees, gather the strength, then you throw the ball. You don't go and throw the ball straight away. So that is anticipation, preparing for an action. Look at this particular GIF file. You can see these two cartoon characters. The anticipation of the second character who is receiving. You can see how these ears are animated and how this character leans back and how the first character leans forward. So in cartoons, showing this anticipation adds a realistic kind of very enthusiastic outlook for the overall animation. Number 3 is known as the staging. Staging means how do you show the exact angle or the character's part or the action that you want to show to the audience. How do you make sure audience can see the exact part or the output or the action of the character? Look at this GIF file. Now the idea of the animator is to show the frustration of this animated character, and it has done that by focusing on the character's sitting action. So this is known as the staging. Number 4 is known as straight ahead and post action. Now these are two animation principles used by traditional animators and also by the modern animators. Let me show you this GIF file. The first one is pose to pose. That means you go from that square to the sphere to the triangle. In the second way, it goes from triangle to the square straight away. Let's look at the differences again. So square to the triangle and triangle to the square. So that's the difference between pose to pose and straight ahead. In straight ahead, you straight away jump from one certain action to another action and then to another one. In pose to pose, you have intermediate occasions or other frames which you need to focus on. Next animation principle in our list is known as follow through and overlapping action. Follow through and overlapping action. Let me show you. Look at this GIF. Look at the hair. Now the character spins in a different speed, but the hair comes after. So this is a follow through action. Action resulted by another action. Now the movement of hair was resulted by the rotation of the character, which adds more realism and nice flow to your cartoons. Let me show you another example. Now look at this animation right here. Just before the character goes down, the body goes later. So this is also known as drag. So it's another part of follow through and overlapping action. The action is overlapping with the existing one. It's known as the drag. And look at this particular animation example here. Now to show that these characters are animated, you can see they are holding the hands. Rather than making a rigid animation, this allows users to give a certain movement in the background. Next is a slow in and slow out. Slow in and slow out means none of these animations are starting or ending rigidly. They have a slow start and slow out. Look at this cube movement. It doesn't move to the left and right with the same constant speed. It starts with 0, gradually increase the speed and gradually comes to an halt. It is known as slow in and slow out. Number 7 is known as arcs. Arcs means if you draw a graph to a certain particular movement, you should get an arc rather than a linear line. Which means the arc animation principles explain all of the movements in the natural, any movement that you can find naturally, they have the arc. Look at this. Now the character is crying and the movement of this character, the hand movement, is not rigid, not linear. To get a better idea, look at this. Now the movement of the Mickey Mouse here is looking at the left side and the right side. If you draw a graph to this particular animation, you should get an arc. So this is meant by the arc, giving a natural smooth movement to the animations. Next one is known as the secondary action. Secondary action means the action which is going on parallelly with the main action. Now look at this example here, the Bambi character. Walking is the main action, but the movement of the head and the singing will be the secondary action. Look at here, the bow is moving and his whistling is the secondary action. Next is the timing. Number 9 on our list is the timing. Timing is pretty straightforward and it's related to slow in and slow out that we discussed earlier. The principle says that elements should consistently move in natural way as they would in the real world. For emphasis, we can say that they can be purposely speed up or slow down. The number of frames used to establish the timing or will establish in timing. More frames create a slow action, fewer frames create a fast action. For example, look at this animation where Daffy Duck's the first action have a natural timing, and then the last action when he comes in close to the viewer is purposely fast for emphasis. So the controlling of the timing is very important. Imagine two characters moving, an elephant and an ant. So the leg movement of the ant should be very fast, where the leg movement of the elephant should be slower. So that is how you capture the timing in animation to make sure the relations between two characters or two animations or two actions are emphasized to the user. Look at this particular example. Now one thing that timing can do The timing can emphasize on the weight of the characters. Imagine two objects falling down. If you have two objects, let's say a metal ball and a feather. So metal ball will fall faster where the feather will fall very slowly. Now with this particular principle, the audience can understand these two objects are different in their weight. Then the most important animation principle is number 10, exaggeration. Now the cartoons are not realistic. They need to exaggerate on the feelings, and they need to exaggerate on the movement, and also whatever the story that you're going to put to the audience. Let me give you an example. Now the way that character wakes up, goes up in the air, it's not going to happen in a realistic world. But that exaggeration gives more enthusiasm to the audience because it's nicer to look at. So exaggeration can be used heavily on your animations that you're creating. And it also says that too much realism can distract from what animation's best at, entertaining. If you go with a very realistic movement always, it doesn't become a very entertaining cartoon to watch. But keep in mind, certain cartoons, certain type of cartoons need realism. In that case, you can keep an exaggeration up to a certain level. Other than that, exaggeration can be a really great help if you're trying to provide a very good entertainment for your audience. Number 11 is known as a solid drawing. Even if you're drawing a 3D cartoon, it's very important to understand how these characters are moving in a realistic third dimensional world. So how to handle that is by drawing these parallel lines to understand the width, height, depth of the character. And also you need to think about the anatomy of the character, balance of the character, consistency of the character. It doesn't have to be a character, it can be a different object as well. In that case, you can think about the light and shadow, volume and weight. So if you think about these attributes when you are creating your animation, when you're drawing your animation, it will be extremely easier for you to relate this with different objects in your cartoon, making it nicer to look at. And number 12 is known as the appeal or the personality. It is the most difficult animation principle to achieve. Reason, in any animation character, the entertaining part is totally relies on the personality of the character. Let me give you an example. If you think about cartoons like Looney Tunes cartoons, the Bugs Bunny character and Tweety Bird character, Roadrunner cartoon, Sylvester, these characters are remembered due to their personality. They do have their own personality created by the animator. So that can be given from the appeal, the physical appearance, the costumes, their behavior, their actions, especially the exaggeration. All of these animation principles combined together, you will be able to create a personality to a character. That's known as the appeal. As you can see in this example, the character's action massively influence the personality of the character. Hopefully, you got a better idea about the 12 principles of animation. Remember, your knowledge on animation principles will be tested in your final examination. We'll wind up the session. Thank you.